Hey everybody, Derek Judd, the Cowboy Criminologist here with Cowboy Criminology. Uh, so getting ready to leave, and I had just a little bit of time to make a new video, and this is going to be a follow up to the Sandra Doorley video that I did last week. And as most of you already know, Sandra Doorley blew up huge a couple weeks ago for failing to stop after a police officer in her jurisdiction was trying to get her to pull over. And the body cam footage ended up being leaked, and it turned into this whole big thing. And if you remember, if you watch my video, you heard me say that unfortunately, this is not unusual for police officers to encounter this, especially when it's high-ranking officials in their own department, children, family member, friends of high-ranking members in their department, city officials, county officials, basically anybody who's given a position of authority or a title has this idea that the law doesn't apply to them and they're awarded certain perks and privileges because of their position. And so I wanted to, this interview was sent to me, and I wanted to hold off, and I wanted to kind of go with it, go over the video with y'all and give y'all my first take of the video. Governor Kathy Hochul is convened a public integrity investigation into Sandra Doorley's conduct, and Kathy Hochul asking for a public integrity investigation, considering what she's allowed a lot of DAs in the state to get away with, is it's the definition of virtue signaling on her part. This case has a lot of consequences, and I'll get to that a little bit later in the video. But an organization of defense attorneys in New York is wanting her investigated, wanting her. I think they're pushing to have her disbarred, and I think I think she needs to be. When you're in a position of public trust, you don't get to have these little lapses in judgment. Your integrity has to be unimpeachable when you are charged with making sure other people obey, respect, and follow the law. And which she obviously doesn't feel that she needs to do, because, as she said so many times, I'm the DA, I'm on the phone with your boss, all of this nonsense. But this has other ramifications. And like I said, those ramifications actually apply to the chief of police, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But I want to go ahead and I'm going to pull this up, and we're going to take a look at the video she did with a local news affiliate.
So, Sandra, I'm going to start with a question I think everybody wants to know. Sure. Why didn't you stop?
I have no good answer for that. I regret what I did. I am sorry for what I did. If I could go back in time, I certainly would handle the situation a lot differently.
Okay, a couple things there with body language. There's a very slight furrowing in the brow, and there are some asymmetric body movements that let me know that she doesn't have confidence in what she says. Like, it's almost like she feels like she has to say this, like she's being compelled to say it, but she doesn't. She says she doesn't know why she didn't just pull over, why she didn't react. But there's a one-sided shoulder shrug, and that one-sided shoulder shrug it's a tell, and that tell is I know why I did it, but let's not focus on that. Just let me get through this apology and let's move on. So if you watch her body language throughout this, and let me explain something. A lot of police officers will say that they recognize body language, and they know that if somebody looks up and to the left, it means they're lying, or they look down and to the right. Okay. It is not enough in court to say, well, I recognize the body language of somebody being deceptive. You have to be able to tell with 100% certainty how that body movement, that involuntary reaction in a room that's really hot, that's really cold, whatever it is, you have to be able to explain what's behind that, and you have to be able to prove it, more importantly. All right. So as a good investigator is going to look at that, and they're going to use that to guide their questions to get to the truth. They're going to recognize it as deception, but a good officer, they're going to recognize it, but unless it's completely germane to the case and has significance, there's absolutely no reason to put it in a report. And I've seen this in a lot of videos coming up. If you're not going to put it in the report and you can't see it on video, you can't articulate it on video, then you don't testify to it in court. That is a good way to get yourself hung. I saw a short yesterday where an officer testified in a trial of a rapper, that when the rapper came out, he heard him yelling and he was throwing up gang signs, and the defense attorney's like, what gang signs were they? And he's like, I don't know. Which wouldn't have been so detrimental, except the defense attorney just went straight for the throat and mentioned specifically why it wasn't in his report. Okay, so that's what cooked his goose right there. I used to always tell my officers, think like a defense attorney and talk to the jury. Meaning, think about whatever the defense attorney is going to ask you about your actions and be able to explain and justify rationally why you took those actions. Describe in great detail what's in your report, and don't testify to anything outside of your report. So, because ultimately the prosecutor can't help you, and a lot of times they can actually cause you more harm than good, and the judge is there to be impartial. So if you want to get a conviction, you've got to get the jury to believe you if you're a police officer. All right, so
I wish I could say this is why I didn't stop.
there's that one-sided shoulder shrug.
I made a mistake.
What were you hoping to achieve by calling the police chief 3 times during that incident?
So the context is, you know what, I work with law enforcement every single day. I have every single chief's cell phone in my phone. When I realized that the officer was attempting to pull me over, I wanted to make sure by calling the chief that he knew it was me and that I wasn't a threat. That first call lasted approximately 18 seconds. Can I tell you exactly what was said in it? I don't remember.
Interesting. So you are the district attorney from Monroe County, and I can assume that you supervise at least 3 different law enforcement or cases that are submitted to you by at least 3 different law enforcement agencies. You have graduated law school, and you've been a practicing attorney for some years. We're not asking you to recite the Iliad from memory. We're asking you to remember what you said to the chief of police in an 18-second phone call. And she can't remember everything that happened in that 18-second phone call. Let's see where this gets us, and we'll come back. But I think it's gonna if this goes where I think it's gonna go, it's gonna shoot us ahead to my next point.
Was that the wrong decision? Obviously, yes. It was wrong. I made the wrong decision, and I regret it.
You were trying to get out of the ticket.
Okay, right there. When she was asked, were you trying to get out of that ticket, there was a slight head nod before the yes. Okay. She's telling on herself. She's wanting to tell everybody she's wanting to tell everybody what they want to hear, and is just basically going with the "I'm human, I make mistakes" defense. And um, I I guess my question at this point is, how did she manage to convict anybody in Monroe County? Like, um, she just seems horrible, and she's using the same defenses that don't work in court. I'm just wondering how she's ever managed to secure a single conviction. Like, that doesn't really speak very highly of the defense attorneys in Monroe County, does it?
I wanted the officer to know that I was not a threat, and I'm sorry for that.
Why not just pull over and tell him you're not a threat?
I don't have a good answer for that. I made a mistake. I was not thinking clearly.
Okay. So I called the chief to tell the officer that I'm not a threat. No, you called the chief to tell that officer that you're stopping the district attorney of Monroe County. You made the call for special treatment. Just stop. But she's in a catch-22 here, because really denial is the only defense that she has, because if she admits to it, she opens herself for all of the crimes that I mentioned in my last video. Um, if you want law enforcement not to see you as a threat, when you see them coming up behind you, pull over to the right like you're supposed to. Roll down your windows, have your driver's license and insurance ready to go, and comply with their actions. You know what? They're not going to see you as a threat. All right. Are they still going to be guarded? Yes, good officers are still going to be guarded, because compliance does not mean that compliance at one point in a contact does not guarantee compliance throughout the contact. Okay. So it's mind blowing that this is where she's choosing to go. But let's see.
And so fast. If you understand, the area where, I first saw the officer to my house, it was a little over a minute. The whole thing unraveled so quickly. I made a lot of mistakes. If I could go back in time, I would certainly stop and handle it differently, but I didn't, and I was a jerk.
You told
There's
the
that little
officer to,
head shake.
quote, get out
I
of
was
the
a jerk.
house when
She
he
shook
called
her
you.
head,
You resisted his command.
basically saying
You went
I
into your
wasn't the jerk,
SUV,
the
you went
officer
into your
was.
house, and at
But
one point you called him
you have
out.
that slight head shake, and
Anyone
then
else who did
there's a
that
nod.
likely would have been cuffed and arrested.
I absolutely regret everything I said. I really have no words for my behavior. You know what? I could tell you that I had a bad day. There were things on my mind, but really that is no excuse. I was wrong. Police officers deserve to be treated with respect. Me, of all people, I've been the advocate for that in this community. And I
Okay, right
failed.
there. So one thing to look at, if you notice, she's not doing a whole lot of blinking. Her posture is very unnatural, and this prolonged eye contact is deception in itself. Now, I don't know Sandra Doorley. I've never sat down with her, so I'm not able to pick up an actual baseline for her. But her blinking doesn't seem to be as consistent as it is with normal people. Now, that a medical condition, lack of sleep, stress, absolutely all those things can come into effect. But the raised eyebrows and the wide open eyes looking directly at the interviewer, that intense direct eye contact is an indication of, you believe me, right? Like, look at me, look how truthful I'm being. See, I'm leaning into you, so you've got to. And then there's the look away, and that look away, that breaking eye contact is in America specifically. Eye contact when you're speaking to somebody is considered polite. But if you hold eye contact and you just stare at somebody, it's very disconcerting. We're not even in the same room, but I'm pretty sure most of you are like, all right, cowboy, that's pretty creepy. Knock it off. And I agree. All right. It's uncomfortable for me sitting here because I'm actually watching myself do it. And it's weird. But that break in eye contact is a subconscious, okay, you're holding eye contact too long. You need to look away. But then it affects the rest of her posture. So it's interesting. Yeah.
Immensely.
I was having a bad
I owe
day.
that officer an apology. I owe law enforcement an apology. I have nothing else other than to say, I am sorry, and it wasn't me. That's not how I act.
If you saw body-worn camera video of someone in your position who ignored those commands, would you push to charge them with more than just a speeding ticket?
What I would do if I was reviewing something like this, I would look at the whole circumstances. Just like we do every single, case that comes in the office. We've got to look at everything that was going on, and I think that's what should be done in my case.
Were you under the influence of any alcohol, any drugs?
Oh, okay. Here it is. So I'd look at the whole circumstance around the case because, I broke the law, but you got to understand this is very common with people who want to have influence over police officers, police departments, and police department personnel. All right. This whole thing that, well, it's different for me because the context of the stop, well, I wasn't a threat. Yes, I disobeyed his commands. I went back into my vehicle. I refused to go to the back of the vehicle. I went into my house. But you've got to understand, I wasn't a threat. Yes, I did wrong, and no, nobody should do that. Everybody should comply. I'm an advocate for law enforcement. Woohoo! But at the same time, now everything has changed, because, like I said, she's backed into a corner. Because if she admits that she'd prosecute on this without looking at the special circumstances in the individual, and I know this makes me sound like a little bit of a hypocrite because you've heard me say in videos in the past, you've got to take every criminal justice involved case based on its own merits. And she's kind of using my words against me. The difference is you can't use that as a defense for your own criminal actions. Okay. Okay. We have a baseline for when she's telling the truth, because being accused of being on drugs and alcohol like that took her by surprise. However, when people run from the cops, it's usually because of something in their past. It's usually because of something in the vehicle or something in their body. Those are really the only three reasons people run from law enforcement. And that's why when people refuse to pull over, it elicits a larger response, and it puts officers on edge. And that's why that lack of compliance forces an officer into a state of hypervigilance, and
Absolutely.
sometimes violence erupts where it doesn't need to erupt because of that
5:20 and went right
noncompliance.
home. No illegal drugs. I'm
Very
always on
unfortunate.
prescription chemotherapy drugs that I take, at least 3 to 4 times a week.
Oh, there it is.
The influence of any.
I'm always on prescription drugs for
illegal and that I
chemotherapy.
believe would have affected, my ability to make a decision.
Just take those 4 times a week. Okay, and I'm not trying to disparage her or anything. And obviously, if you're taking highly toxic medication like that used to treat forms of cancer, yes, that can affect your judgment, and that can affect how you do things. But if that's the case, if her judgment is that impaired because of the medication she's on, well, I mean, she's kind of set up her own case for why she shouldn't be trusted in this highly this integrity heavy position of public authority.
I was stupid, Jen. There's nothing else I could say, and I regret what I did, and I'm really sorry for it.
It looks like
There's nothing else I can say. I regret for what I did. I'm sorry.
Clear-cut example of rules for thee and not rules for me.
I understand that, especially with members of the community. For example, white people and black people, I submit law enforcement differently, the criminal justice system differently. But all I can tell you is, as a DA, what I perceived. My initial thought, actually, when I saw the police officer turn around, I thought he was going off to another stop. Then he got a call for service. And then when I called the chief, my goal then was to say, I'm not a threat, because I didn't want him to think he was approaching a car and not knowing what to expect inside.
Have you spoken with the police officer since this
Okay,
incident?
here's the thing. Law enforcement officers, we do not need that type of courtesy. We really don't. If you're not a threat, show us by being compliant. If you're going to be non-compliant and you're going to refuse lawful orders and lawful commands, we're going to assume you are a threat. We don't need you to call our chiefs. You don't need to call our supervisors to tell us that you're not a threat. Show us you're not a threat. It's that simple.
I have reached out twice to try to apologize to him, and the messages that I left were apologetic. I would like to actually sit down face to face and apologize with him, because I think he deserves that. I'm waiting to hear back from him.
I want to move a little bit into the ethical questions.
I've got to say, if I got those messages on my email, on my phone, what have you, I wouldn't have returned them either, because I'm not going to take an apology from somebody who just punched me in the face. I'm sorry. You're done. You're out of there. That's and the last thing I want to do is sit down with you and listen to to the same lame excuse you tried to give me on the stop, but just in a calmer tone. I'm not going to listen to it. And I don't think he should. I don't think he should have to.
Of some of the things you said during the traffic stop, you said, "Go ahead, write me a ticket. I'm the one who's going to prosecute myself. You know what I'm going to do with that ticket?" Question mark. What would you have done with that ticket?
Jen, I said a lot of things that were not pretty, and that I'm ashamed of, and that I'm embarrassed by, and I'm sorry for. But I sent the ticket in by 1 o'clock the following day and pled guilty because I was speeding.
I think people might hear you say that and they might say, "Gee, have you ever fixed a ticket for yourself or someone else before?"
Absolutely not. I've been in local courts, helping because we've had a DA shortage. And when citizens come into, the court that I was in, I would give them parking tickets on speeding.
So that's interesting. That's a great question on this reporter's part, asking if she's ever fixed a ticket for somebody. But she's already said that she would drop a ticket for herself and that she wouldn't prosecute herself. And it's a fair question. And so now it's like, how do we know? And so this whole question of integrity, it goes back to when she was on the phone with the chief. Now, keep in mind, there's already a sergeant's on the way, a lieutenant shows up. The chief is, by telling the district attorney flat out, you need to comply with my officer. And if there's anything that he does that violates law or policy, I will handle it. And you can come in, you can make a complaint, but he didn't do that. So if the defense organization, the defense attorney organization that's working on getting her sanctioned is successful, every case that she is successfully prosecuted has a good chance of going under review. And there's a very good chance that a lot of, potentially that some bad people could be let out of jail or prison because of this breach of integrity, not only on her part, but on the supervisors for Webster PD.
took a defensive driving class. So technically, I guess I have given offers to.
And by the way, so 20 and a 55 or 20 over got her a $93 ticket with $93 in state mandated court cost and fees. So all of this nonsense, ruining her career over $186, and she probably could have just done defensive driving and gotten out of it. Man, nobody likes getting stopped. Nobody likes getting a ticket, but you know what? Take it and move on. And if you absolutely feel that the ticket was given to you in error, go fight it in court. That's the time to plead that. It's not on the side of the road, and it's certainly not in your driveway, counselor.
To people out there, I wasn't even going to get a special prosecutor and ask for that courtesy for myself. I was just going to, take my lumps and pay my ticket. I had a clean license.
Technically, the situation was an arrestable offense. That's what we've been told. You didn't stop. So it looks like you did get special treatment for being the DA.
I get back to, I made a mistake. I'm owning that mistake. I'm being accountable for that mistake.
Okay, so the special treatment thing, I am going to address that. So most states give officers a wide range of discretion in how they handle certain offenses. Okay. There have been times where I've had the opportunity to make arrest or file charges on somebody, and I didn't. Looking at their circumstances, looking at them as an overall person, I chose not to take that action. To give them a second chance, to be a human being, because sometimes people do genuinely make mistakes. But the problem is when you have somebody like a district attorney all but demanding special provisions from the local police department, it shows a bias in the criminal justice system. Now, even though police officers on a daily basis, excuse me, on a daily basis will issue warnings instead of tickets. They will talk to somebody about their behavior to keep them from getting in further trouble with the law. Unfortunately, when it's a public figure like this, it's automatically branded as special treatment, even though officers have dealt with situations like this before. And, yeah, there's a lot of things that do not look right about this. But the problem isn't with the officer giving her special treatment. And I think that's what everybody's focused on is the officer. No, we need to look at that lieutenant. We need to look at that chief. They're the ones who interfered with this officer's traffic stop, and they are the ones who, by failing to tell her specifically, hey, you know what, we could talk about this later, but for the time being, you need to deal with this officer right here, and we're done with it. But that didn't happen. So yeah, sometimes it's interesting because a lot of times, if you think about it, if you've ever been stopped and you've gotten a ticket, you've wondered, well, why did I get a ticket? Why couldn't the officer use that discretion not to write me the ticket? And I've had people use that before. Well, I know you have discretion not to write me that ticket. And I said, yes, and I'm using my discretion to write you that ticket. Well, why are you writing me a ticket? I don't know. Maybe it's the 4 tickets you have sitting next to you from the last 4 towns you've blew through that tell me you have yet to learn your lesson. And so, officer discretion, it's very individual and contextualized to the case. But you may have received that special treatment from an officer where they could have arrested you, where they could have written you a ticket. All of these different things, but they didn't. But for some reason, these high profile cases, tend to kind of take it out of the realm of officers' discretionary behavior into doing special behaviors or extending professional courtesy. I got to say, for the officer involved, Officer Crisafulli, this was literally a no-win situation. And brother, I am so sorry you got put in the middle of this nonsense.
Sorry.
I have to ask because we sort of got tipped off on this earlier.
There's the head
last
shake
week,
again.
and we started making some calls. Your statement comes out, and your statement says, I had no intention of using my position for a benefit, and no one is above the law. Yet it very clearly looked like in that video you thought you were above the law. Did you not think that the body camera video was going to come out?
The first statement went out for the sake of transparency. I wanted to make sure that I was being transparent in what I did. I've always been very clear about, what I've done in this
The
office.
first statement went out for sake of transparency. Oh, I love that term, especially when it comes from a bureaucrat. Whenever a bureaucrat talks about transparency, you can bet your bottom dollar that it has everything in the world to do with anything other than transparency.
At that point, I wasn't even thinking about the body-worn camera. I just wanted to make sure that it was out there that I got pulled over by the Webster police and I got a speeding ticket and I had pled guilty to it.
Have you ever called a chief in the community before for a favor like this?
No.
Have you ever asked someone to not write a ticket for you because you're the DA?
No.
That's weird because I believe she's telling the truth there that she had never called a law enforcement agency asking for a favor. There's a little bit of surprise there, but I mean it seems like a genuine reaction to me. So maybe she's just never been in a position where she felt like she had to, but I've got to say nobody's buying the whole. I was just trying to let the chief of police know I wasn't a threat to this officer. And she stated a number of times in the video, and if you watch the previous video, you can see her pacing around. She talks about she's having a bad day, and she's got 3 murder cases pending and one thing or another. And did she just use very poor judgment? Yeah, she absolutely did. But the problem is her that very lack of judgment and her lack of integrity is exactly why she's in the position she's in now.
Warren Webster, do you think that you can still effectively be the district attorney here in Monroe County? And do you see yourself still prosecuting cases in a courtroom?
I would ask the community for my forgiveness. I would ask them to look at my 32-and-a-half-year career. I would ask them to look at how I handle cases, and especially to look at the last year and the cases that I've prosecuted for this community, and judge me on that, not judge me on for what I did that afternoon. It was terrible.
Let's look at all those cases, because if the community doesn't, the Public Integrity Unit and that Council of Defense Attorneys is certainly going to.
A bad judgment call. I made some mistakes and I wish I could take them back, but I can't. So now I own them and I will be responsible for them, and whatever happens, I will take the consequences.
Did you ever consider resigning?
No. I was elected to serve this community, and I will continue to serve this community.
A majority of the city, county, and state lawmakers from our area have called for sort of these outside independent investigations into your actions, both criminally and ethically. Do you welcome those?
Absolutely. I welcome anyone to look at what I did. I welcome anyone to look at the circumstances, surrounding that day, and judge me like I do every other case that comes in.
And so you're out there, she's taking ownership, and she's done a lot of things to play on sympathy, and she's trying to say that the good about her outweighs the bad. And so she welcomes these outside investigations, And why wouldn't, what else is she going to say? But it's kind of contradictory to say that she never thought about resigning, but that she welcomes these outside investigations. Why would she not be put on paid administrative leave like any other official would be in these similar circumstances until an investigation could be done to determine wrongdoing, level of wrongdoing, and whether or not her continued services as the district attorney violates any legal or ethical considerations. This interview is a little hard to watch, and it's starting to become very cyclical because she keeps going back to the exact same type of excuses she tried to use during the traffic stop, and so that's another thing right there. Why wouldn't she just go on paid administrative leave, bring in another prosecutor to stable the ship, as it were, until an investigation can be done, and then let the chips fall where they may? But she's very adamant that she's not going to resign. Basically, they're going to have to force her out of office, and I hope that's what happens.
Judge criminal matters on the individual facts, what happened that day to that person. We look at the character and nature of the defendant, whether or not there was a victim, and I just ask them to treat me like that. Again,
You judge criminal cases on what's happened to that person that day? How? This is not a bar fight where somebody was, standing up for a friend or a girlfriend or something and caught an assault charge. This was an intentional act on her part. This is this is not. I'm not an attorney, at least not yet, but this does not seem to be helping her case.
Tell this community enough how embarrassed and sorry I am.
The governor has weighed in on this. She has directed the Commission on Prosecutorial Conduct to investigate. You will be its first investigation, and it's my understanding that you initially did not support even the existence of this commission. So how do you sort of balance that in your mind about a statewide investigation by an agency that's fairly novice at this?
And just to be clear, I served 4 times.
Whoa. So she opposed this public integrity unit that does prosecutorial investigations. She opposed that. Man, Ben Franklin, as he so often is, was so right. A man who represents himself, or an attorney who represents himself, as a fool for a client. Holy cow. Like, I don't know if it's hubris, or I don't know if she just really thinks this is something that has just been blown out of proportion, but she has done herself zero favors.
Of the District Attorneys Association, and that was one of the issues that we were talking about, whether or not there should be a Commission on Prosecutorial Conduct. There's also a grievance committee. I'm agreeing to self-report to the grievance committee. I welcome any investigation. I will cooperate and handle whatever punishment is handed down to me, because I am truly sorry.
So for those of you who watch Serial Killer Saturdays with me, ask me what I think about self-reporting. Go ahead. Ask me. I dare you. If you think my thoughts on violent offenders getting bond is bad, go ahead and ask me what I think about self-reporting. I dare you.
Sorry.
How will you earn back the trust of this community?
I want the community to look at what we do for this community. I want them to look at the good work of the members of this office. They are in court every day fighting for victims and making sure that our streets are safe. And I will continue to lead that. I will continue to make sure that we are doing what we need to do.
Who's protecting the streets from people who won't pull over for police officers?
in order to improve the criminal justice system in Rochester.
Wow, that was painful. Okay, so that was District Attorney Sandra Doorley giving her take on this incident, and of course she's so sorry, and her actions, of course, show that. But that's when I first was sworn in as a deputy sheriff, my first job in law enforcement after I got out of the academy. The sheriff made it very clear that there were only three things that he would fire a deputy for. And one of those is if he ever caught you in a lie, he would fire you. And he would do that because once you compromise your integrity, he can't have you as an officer. And unfortunately, there are so few leaders like that in law enforcement anymore. And that sheriff never hesitated to have the backs of his deputies or his jailers. And he taught me a great deal. And in a lot of ways, I'm incredibly grateful for my time under his tutelage. And a lot of times it made it hard because when you have somebody that you work with who sets the standard up here, but everybody wants to hang out kind of down here, and you realize that not every officer you come across has that level of integrity, it gets very difficult for you, especially when you try and keep your integrity up here, but everyone else is comfortable watching other people play down here. And you can't have that. It's a public integrity position. And once you lose your integrity, once anybody has any reason to question that integrity, they question your ability, and everything you do becomes tainted. So, anyway, y'all, I hope you enjoyed that. Y'all take care. Like I said, I'll be back here in a couple weeks, and we got some great stuff coming up on Cowboy Criminology. So please like, subscribe, and share on your favorite social media. We'll see you here in a couple weeks.